Hello, my name's Elin Golden, and I'm the Social Justice and Advocacy Consultant for the Diocese of Toronto. Each year, when we release the Social Justice Vestry motion, clergy and lay people across our diocese have questions about it. Some are specific to the issues around that year's motion, and some are more about how to present and discuss the motion in a good way. We want to address these questions to make it easier for you to have these discussions in your parish. This year's motion is on justice for workers seeking decent work for all. It calls on the provincial government to adopt and implement a number of legislative measures that would require employers to offer 10 paid sick days per calendar year, to provide a minimum number of hours per week for each position and give employees adequate notice of work schedules, and not to pay employees differently for doing the same work when the only distinction between them is their employment or immigration status. You can find the full motion and backgrounder on our diocesan website. The link will be provided at the end of this video. Given that we continue to be under COVID-19 restrictions in our diocese, we're unable to offer an in-person workshop. However, we've invited Anglicans from across our diocese to send us their questions and have created this video to respond directly to them. I'm joined by members of our Social Justice and Advocacy and Poverty Reduction Committees who will take these questions in turn.
The motion calls on the provincial government to take particular actions. How do we keep the discussion of this motion from falling out along partisan lines?
Yes, as a registered charity, but more importantly, I think, as a Christian body, a church body, our approach to advocacy is necessarily nonpartisan. We believe that individuals and governments from all parties can contribute to the common good, and also that individuals and governments of all parties fall short in doing that. So while some of the policy measures that we advocate for may be endorsed by certain political parties or opposed by other parties, our aim in presenting the motion isn't to promote or oppose any particular party. Rather, it's to put forward the concerns of our neighbors, especially low-income and precarious workers who are directly affected by these issues and for whom these policy changes could make an extremely positive difference. Individuals and parishes in ridings represented by MPPs of the governing party have the advantage of bringing these concerns before the people who currently have the power to make such policy changes. And if you're typically a supporter of the governing party, your voice may be more readily heard. The more that calls for policy change come from different sectors of society and people of different political persuasions, the more likely those policy changes are to be adopted and to be retained when a different party comes into power.
Small businesses have really been hurting in this pandemic. Some of these asks might pose additional challenges for small businesses. How can we advocate for workers' rights while also supporting small businesses?
The aim of this motion is not meant to place intolerable burdens on small businesses. In Ontario, some of the worst offenders in terms of inadequate treatment of employees are large and very large corporations, including ones which have made record profits during the pandemic. Indeed, small businesses often find it to their advantage to offer better working conditions to their employees, because doing so allows them to attract quality staff, increase employee loyalty, productivity, consumer satisfaction, and builds community. An organization of small businesses called the Better Way Alliance promotes and supports decent wages, paid sick days, and fair scheduling laws in Ontario. We encourage Anglicans across our diocese to support local businesses, particularly those which treat their workers fairly. Ultimately, however, we are called by Christ and by our baptismal vows to seek justice and dignity for our fellow human beings.
The diocese doesn't require parishes to provide paid sick days to our employees. Isn't it a bit hypocritical of us to advocate for benefits when we don't provide them ourselves?
The diocese does have a generous sick leave policy for clergy and synod office staff, but does not require parishes to provide such benefits to parish employees. Rather, recognizing that parishes vary greatly in size and financial capacity, the diocese does not oblige parishes to offer more generous sick leave policies than those required under the Employment Standards Act. However, parishes that do have the capacity to do so may, if they wish, create a workplace policy that goes beyond the minimum requirements of the legislation, as long as this policy is consistently applied. We hope that the discussion of this motion will lead parishes to reflect on their own policies and their calling to be equitable and just in their treatment of parish employees, but we can add our voices to the call for greater justice for workers across the province, while still in the process of working towards such benefits in our own institutions.
It is a common practice for employers to provide annual increases for employees based on seniority or merit. Is this in conflict with the request for equal pay and benefits for workers doing the same work?
It is not in conflict. The third ask in this year's Vestry motion is to require employers to provide equal pay and benefits to workers who are doing the same work, regardless of their immigration status or employment status. It is not about ignoring a person's real seniority or merit. It's about addressing inequality related to categories of worker status. Employment status refers to the categories of full-time, part-time, contract, and temporary. Right now, for example, people can be hired part-time and scheduled to work for the same number of hours as an employee that is hired full-time. They're both doing the same job. Yet a part-time worker may be hired at a lower wage and not receive any medical benefits. Regarding immigration status, migrant workers tend to not speak out about unjust pay or unfair treatment because they fear deportation. We are asking for the government to reinstate the pay equity provisions originally brought in by Bill 148 in April 2018, which this government later repealed. Those provisions allow for differences of pay based on seniority and merit. We're asking that regardless of status, if everyone is performing the same work, they should receive the same pay and benefits.
Every year, we're asked to support a different social justice and Vestry motion. Last year, it was anti-racism. This year, it's workers' rights. How does this motion tie in with our activity on past motions?
So that's an interesting question, because the fact that we have a Vestry motion on a different topic every year could seem to suggest that we're done with racism now. We did that last year. But I mean, as Audre Lorde said, there are no single issue struggles because we don't live single issue lives. What we're trying to do is every year tease out one strand of the interconnected struggles for justice. And this year, for instance, you could see this as a practical outworking of our motions on anti-racism, because precarious, low-wage, migrant and undocumented workers are predominantly racialized people. So the issues do connect the same way that issues of environmental damage and Indigenous rights are deeply connected, that housing is connected to indigeneity and to race. None of these things are separate. Obviously, some parishes each year will find a particular motion especially captures their energy, their imagination, and another year may not. But it's an invitation to look at different aspects of connected issues, and perhaps it's also an invitation to go a bit deeper into the ways in which they are connected.
The issues raised by the social justice Vestry motion can be controversial and lead to some high emotions running during vestry. Do you have any tips for making the conversation go more smoothly during your vestry meeting?
Well, first, it helps to prepare the ground. Make the motion and background materials available ahead of time. Encourage people to look at the additional resources on the diocesan website. One thing that's been helpful in our parish is to have discussions during the post-Sunday service Zoom coffee hour, kind of a lunch and learn. This is leading up to vestry. Remember that parishes can make changes to the suggested wording of the motion that suits their purposes. All we ask is that the wording of the motion be reported to the social justice consultant. Just having the conversation is worthwhile because it allows us to consider how we exercise our calling to live out Christ's love and justice to our neighbors in practical ways.
Thank you to all the clergy and lay people of our diocese who sent in their questions. And thank you to Amy, Andrea, Barb, Lisa, Maggie, John, and Michael for addressing them. If you have further questions, please don't hesitate to send them to me at egolden@toronto.anglican.ca. On behalf of the Social Justice and Advocacy Committee and the Poverty Reduction Subcommittee, we wish you and your parish a constructive vestry meeting, and we look forward to hearing how the discussion has gone in your parish. God bless.